Welcome, everyone, to this edition, episode 2 of SEL in EDU. Hi, Craig.
Hey, Krista. How's it going?
It is good. It's a Saturday morning. I think you and I have a ton of energy that is not really contained in any one direction.
That would be true. That would be true.
But I think we had talked about the first couple episodes were just them getting used to us and who we are. But we're excited to bring on some guests to dig in and really talk about where SEL shows up in education and in all the different ways that it can show up.
Yeah. And so today I'm excited because I have the opportunity to interview you so that the world can learn, just get a couple of, glimpses into who Krista is to the world that we have here. And so I'm pretty excited.
I'm excited as well. So I know that we often talk about, do we come up with some questions or do we just kind of wing it? And you're like, well, what if I just ask you some questions? And so I'm all for that. So let's just see where this goes.
Awesome.
Bring it on, my friend.
Well, let's go. There's a great quote by one of our education leaders who I regard highly. He's author of many things. He just released a children's book, How to Think and like a Coder. And he has this quote that says, all you need is one person to believe in you, and the world is yours, just one. And so I'm curious, who's that one person? And I know there are probably many people, but as early as you can think about it, who is one person who lit that fire, ignited that fire in you that has driven you to be who you are today?
Wow. Okay. Wow. Like, do I go back to elementary school?
I'm leaving it open. I'm leaving it open-ended.
Dang. You may have silenced me because I have all of these different people come in. And so here's how I'm going to answer that.
All right.
I truly believe that there are different people who come into your life at different points and provide opportunities and entries for you that you may not have ever thought about before. And so as I'm talking about that, I am going to share that one of the biggest ahas of my life was I had a principal named Chris Schaefer who came to me one time. I was 7 years in teaching, and he said, the state of Pennsylvania has a grant that allows for people to become what they're calling classrooms for the future, where you become an instructional technology coach. And we're going to apply for this grant. We're one of the schools who is kind of behind in it. So there are other schools who are ahead. Would you be interested in this position? And up until that point, I never thought I was going to have a life outside of the classroom because I loved being with the students so much. It was an absolute joy to wake up every day and to go in. And I taught 10th and 11th grade social studies, so world history and US history from 1850 on. And I never, ever, ever imagined I was leaving the classroom. I thought I was going to retire when I was like 89 years old, coming into the school, like, this is what I want to do. But up until that point, I know that I always played it safe. I like to stay in spots where I felt comfortable. I very rarely pushed myself to do something out of my comfort zone. I went back to teach at the school that I graduated from, as an example. And I thought I was going to retire there. And I thought, wow, I don't know technology. I got through my master's program, not ever creating a PowerPoint because I didn't know how to use it. And he said to me, you are able to connect with people. The content will come, but you have a rapport, and that's what we need. And I thought, wow, I'm really going to regret this if I don't give it a shot. And I opened myself up and I said, sure, I'll do this. What I didn't realize at the time is I actually thought I got to be in the classroom and be a coach at the same time, when actually that meant I had to give up my classroom, move into an office, let somebody else have my favorite content areas, my favorite kids, everything. But I did it, and it opened up a whole new world to me that I didn't even imagine would be possible for me in education. That was totally not where I thought I was going to answer this question.
Well, I appreciate what you've shared. It sounds like, he was a pretty great coach to kind of lift that up so that you could see that more clearly in yourself and look at who you are today. I mean, you are a coach to hundreds of leaders and educators across, the world. And, we were in a conversation earlier today, and it was one of the participants for our conversation. She had shared that in her experience, men generally don't do SEL. They don't do the social emotional learning thing. I joke because I'm like, oh, that's feelings. I want to just cue, the music. Feelings. Da, 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 da. Like I need to know the words. But anyway,
Well, and I have to add in, for those of you who are listening to us, we are also video recording this. So pop on over to the YouTube channel and it will be posted in the
oh,
comments so you can see Craig dancing. And you can also see
oh,
we're wearing matching colors today too.
yeah. I just forgot, my butterfly headgear. But I will, make sure I have some, dope next time. Well, one of the things that when I think about this, and I think it was Ginger in conversation, uh, when I think about men and our work that we are doing around social emotional learning, sometimes we think, okay, this is that feeling stuff, and we don't teach about feelings because we're expected to be, very stoic, and we're supposed to stay strong. We're not supposed to display, emotion. But one of the things that I continue to think about, whether or not it's through my PE coaches when I was in college and I played tennis and I also played volleyball, it made me think about John Wooden, who said, a good coach can change a game, a great coach can change a life. And
Mm,
so I wonder, I don't even have to wonder because we're here today and we have this opportunity here with you to know that a great coach can change a life. And so with this gentleman, elevating your awareness to how great you are and that you still have the ability to impact thousands of lives with youth beyond just your own given classroom, that your classroom is the world. And so I'm grateful that this has been part of your life journey. I
thank
mean, how
you.
did yeah,
I,
how,
wow.
hmm?
No, so what I'm thinking, and what you say really resonates with me because I have three teenage boys, right? And so when
Yeah.
I got interested in social emotional learning, and I was interested in it before I knew what it was actually called, and it has been a part of education for hundreds of years, even though people think it's something new. Like it used to be called character education, before that, values clarification and affective education. So it's not something new. But it definitely deserves renewed focus. And people
Yeah.
think of it as, oh, I have to spill my feelings. Well, I'll be totally honest with you. I'm not all that great at spilling my feelings either to groups of people. It's hard. You're putting
Yes.
yourself out there. And there's a whole other conversation we could have on that. Like being vulnerable doesn't mean that you dump everything out for people. As a
Right.
facilitator, there has to be a purpose behind what you're sharing and why. And it's
Yeah.
not a therapy session.
Right.
There's a
Right.
point for the story, but I think there's a misconception around what SEL is. And so it's self-awareness, and there's lots of components there about recognizing your emotions, but then knowing your strengths and your identity, your cultural,
Mhm.
social identity, but then
Yeah.
also having a growth mindset and knowing that you can be impactful, that you
Mhm.
can be successful. And then the self management is, how do you respond to those emotions in a way that's going to help you get the outcome that you want?
Mhm.
And then goal setting and working
Mhm.
towards that. But so there are emotions evolved, but it's about goal setting and planning. It's also about connecting with other people and being able to navigate conflict. It's
Mhm.
about problem solving and decision making. There's so
Mm.
many other pieces there beyond, let me spill my feelings out to people. And I think that
Yeah.
it gets a bad rap because people don't truly have a deep awareness of what it is.
Yeah. it can be as complex as you don't necessarily need it to be, but it can be as simple as thinking about empathy being a life skill and not a lesson plan, right?
Oh gosh,
Uh yeah.
the quote right there. I say it is who you are and what you do. Not
I'm thinking someone smarter than I probably came up with that. But I it is at that basic is how do you get on ground level within your own humanity and just recognize that sometimes just listening and being present is all you need to do is be able to reflect back to people. This is what I'm hearing and understanding you saying. This is the body language that you're displaying at this time. Can you help me to understand why you are showing up in this way? Right. And just getting curious because sometimes we over analyze and over process a thing because we are so concerned about our ability to understand or manage whatever comes our way,
yes.
the emotions that come with it, our own vulnerability, that's also centered there. Like, am I good enough? And it's like, well, where is all of that coming from? And that kind of goes back to, our childhood, our youth, us being, teenagers, and who are the people around us, right? Who help to build that, you know, personal individual ecosystem that you eventually walk out into the world with. And so it has me thinking like, so, Krista, you are, a champion of SEL, and I'm curious. I don't think I've ever really asked you this question. Um, what or who ignited that fire? What did that start in your early childhood years in your own family? Did that broaden? Did that show up as a classroom instructor? How did you say, what I want to do? One of the things that I want to do in igniting the world is this social emotional learning. So what ignited that passion for you?
When I think back, um,
Mhm,
my family history has been around service. And so when I
mhm,
look at members of my family on both sides, it's been about serving the community, which I think is
mhm,
interesting. And we could come back and talk to because my great grandparents came from Mexico City on my mom's side to Bethlehem,
mm,
PA to work in a steel mill. And so they
wow.
were, the town was picked and said, hey, we have jobs for you because one, we know you can work long hours and you're hardworking. Two, you're used to the heat. And three, you're not going to
Mhm,
argue back because you don't really speak English. So
mhm,
my great grandparents traveled, not by plane, but had kids in a couple states and stuff up through
yeah.
Pennsylvania. When I look at my family there, they're
Mm,
teachers and nurses and doctors and public servants. And so that was something that's always been sort of ingrained. Like, how are you going to give back? But I didn't
mhm,
actually think I was going to be a teacher. I wanted to be a psychologist or a psychiatrist. People's stories were really
yes.
important to me and like their
Mhm,
history and finding out what made them think the way that they did. And
yeah.
I actually entered college as pre-law because I thought I wanted to go into international law and get to
Okay.
travel and learning people's stories. But then somebody said to me, what are you going to do with a pre-law degree if you don't go to law school? And I'm like, ooh, I don't know. So then I'm like, well, maybe I'll be a history major. And then so I switched. And then I realized, like, what do you do with a history degree besides research? And I did not want to do that.
Mm,
And I remembered the teachers who had an impact in my life. And I thought, education, that's a way of serving. And I picked social studies because I knew I wanted to work with teenagers because
mhm,
my teen years were hard. It was
mhm,
confusing. And I had great
yeah.
friends and great family. But I just remember being like, wow, what is happening here? Um,
Mhm,
and so I wanted to come back because I loved social studies, but I loved being with the students more. I loved being a part of their journey and growth.
yeah.
And having my own kids then, and especially them being boys, I wanted to help foster them so that they could become strong, independent, caring, compassionate young men. And notice I said
Mm,
strong and caring and compassionate, because to me, strong
yeah.
is caring and compassionate. Um,
Yes.
and put that out into the world. And that's, yeah, I like, if you're not watching, you're seeing the sign language movement for same, me too. Um, And so I think it was just kind of ingrained in that public service and giving back
Mhm.
and being able to support other people's journeys forward. And
Mhm.
so many mentors in my life have turned around and done that, from middle school and high school teachers to counselors to friends, where we support each other, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not a, oh, you have to do this on your own, or I got here on my own, but it's how do we go together and how do we help
Mhm.
each other become the best versions of ourselves?
Yeah. Wow. Just thinking about your family, origin story, a part of the origin story being, Mexico, right?
Mhm.
And your interest in international law, pre-law, with a focus there. It sounds like there was some interest in advocacy as well, because I know that there are people who are immigrants themselves, are trying to do the best they can. They're pursuing what they want or believe is their own American dream. They want to create and nurture their own families that are enriched by cultural traditions and values and things like that, right? And so that is very powerful to then know that you all have a personal constitution centered on service and giving back. Um, and that's pretty powerful.
And I think that education as a system does not evolve as
Mhm.
quickly as some other systems do. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that you and I have in common, right? That we want to support students, and students whose voices are not heard, or students who are not allowed to show up as themselves in
Yeah.
any situation. And often I think of, like, whose voice is not being heard, and how can we allow people to show up being
Mhm.
themselves and valued
Yeah.
for who they are. And as I say that, I want to just expressly and explicitly say I'm still on that journey. I still make mistakes, but I'm learning and growing, and I want to be an advocate, an ally, an accomplice for
Mhm.
people, because my life has been relatively smooth, but I know of family members who have had a lot of difficulties and barriers, and a lot of my friends who have experienced those barriers. And I want to be able to, through my role in education, bring light to that and honor the strengths that other people are bringing, even though systems may not inherently see that right
Yeah.
away, or there are such ingrained structures that they present barriers to them to have
Yeah.
access that
Yeah.
many of us have.
Yeah. There is a need for educational leaders, whether or not you are a school principal, you're a superintendent, you are a central office leader, um, that there is a responsibility for us, because I am actually also a school leader as well. You said in one of your talks, one of your workshops, that students have to be at the center of teaching and learning, and they have to thrive or they can thrive when there's policies and practices that are part of the foundation and expectation in every classroom ecosystem across a school, a system, a district, a community. And when we know that our students, that their educational experience is centered on SEL skills that are modeled, that are fostered, they are developed and codified, that they are going to be in a sustainable, um, community experience that continues to nurture those skills over time, so they become really great global citizens. But schools have to have a long-term plan of action. That this is part of your foundation. This is part of the viability of what our young people will come to understand as uh, their educational experience.
Yeah, yeah, and it needs to be collective. We as
Yeah,
educators can't do it alone. Like, we need
yeah,
student voice. We can't create an educational system without inquiring from the community what skills they value and they need. We
yeah,
can't do that without talking to the families and building upon the strengths and the skill sets that they have and
Hmm.
connecting and leveraging that. We
Yeah.
need to talk to the students about the experiences that they're having and how the way that our systems are set up is that promoting them to achieve, like helping them achieve their goals, or are there some barriers there? Um, I think sometimes when these structures are already in place for so long, we don't see them anymore. We just assume that, well, this is the way it's always worked. But we need to really look at, is what we're doing serving our students? And when we take it back to social emotional learning, I think there's this fear around what it is anymore and what schools are trying to do to kids, when it's actually, what are we doing for kids to help them be successful, to help them have these life skills of knowing who they are and what they bring to the table, and knowing how to respectfully interact with other people, how to make responsible, caring, ethical decisions for a community. We're not
Yeah.
telling students what to think. We're asking students to talk about how they're thinking and to learn how other people are thinking and how we're connecting and showing up for each other.
Yeah.
Um,
But it starts with creating a safe or brave space in order for them to actually then go down those roads,
yes.
explore those feelings, to really tackle some of the tough stuff. Is one, you have to ensure that students feel safe first. And that means creating an environment where they can take risks emotionally and academically, that you are building a community where empathy is at the center of what we do, and that then we foster that environment where our young people learn how to actually have conversations, how to be able to engage in productive conflict. How do they actually advocate for themselves, even if they feel like, they're the quiet souls? How do you actually help those who are quiet and sometimes marginalized also be able to advocate for themselves in ways that will allow them to move forward in life? And it's super important that each educator, each family member, you do your part to empower young people to be their best selves. But first, I know for me, I have to feel safe in order to do so, and so I think that's part of the big recipe with some of the work we do in SEL.
Absolutely. And so part of what that for me it looks like is that it's cyclical in nature. We can't create that safe, emotionally and physically safe environment for the students unless we take a look at what our role as educators, what our role is and how we're contributing to that on a daily basis, because we have our emotions and our feelings too. And so sometimes I know, even with my boys, like I might be having a bad day and I get snappy with them. Well, me getting snappy with them is not creating an emotionally safe place for them. And so then it's acknowledging, putting my ego aside, because we all have
Yeah,
that ego, and saying, I messed up. Can I
yeah,
please have a do-over? I apologize and I'm going to do better. And so that to me involves changing the power dynamics
yeah,
that sometimes traditionally happen in a classroom. Um, and thinking about how are we contributing to that environment. It just doesn't
yeah,
happen on its own. We have to be active participants in that. And that's where the modeling, the SEL comes in. We're
mhm,
not perfect, we're human, but we need to
yeah,
be able to acknowledge our mistakes and our missteps and be willing to open up about that for our
yeah,
students and tell them we're
yeah,
going to do better. And I think it also means understanding and checking our own biases, because we grew up in different times where there were family values or what we saw on TV, and that might not be the same as our kids that are
yeah,
showing up in schools. And so,
mhm,
how are we thinking about the connections we're having with our students, so that they can show up and as their authentic selves and feel safe?
mhm,
Where it's okay that we don't necessarily see eye to eye on our ideas and our philosophies, but we need to treat each other with respect because and dignity because of our humanity, and that is shared.
absolutely. Wow, I'm brimming with so many things that I would love to just kind of go into, but I know we don't want this this particular conversation to go too long, because some folks probably are listening to us while they're at the grocery store, or they may be taking a nice walk, and so I want to make sure I kind of move us along. But I'm curious, about where are people getting it wrong, or maybe there's some misconceptions about SEL? Because again, knowing you are leading this work, you are meeting with school communities across the nation. You are engaged in some very rich conversations and dialogue. You're hearing stuff at the grocery store. You're hearing people, parents talk about their perspectives on social emotional learning. So what are some things that people should be aware of in regards to the misconceptions that come with our evolution in this work?
I'm so excited that you just said that, because I am embarking on a 3-part webinar with PASCD over the next couple months, focusing on social emotional learning. And our first webinar is about deconstructing the myths of SEL. And that is February 23rd. And so we're going to talk about what are some of those misconceptions and how can we debunk them. I think that a couple I'm just going to throw out there is that it is all of our responsibility to focus on social emotional learning and support our students. It's not just the counselors. It's not just the health and PE teachers. We all have a part to play, and we all can play a part to our strengths and to the context of our classrooms. I think that supporting SEL means that we model that, and that we're conscientiously, is that the right word I'm thinking of?
Yeah.
Reflecting on our own skills at several times throughout the day and monitoring and adjusting. I think that I worked with a school district who said, well, SEL is taking stress away from our kids. No, because stress is a part of life, and stress is good. Like getting nervous about something and feeling a slight stress is what motivates us to keep moving forward. But stress is a part of our lives. And I'm not talking about anxiety and the type of stress that hinders your ability to function. That's a whole other topic. But SEL is about helping our students navigate through those challenging times, navigating through conflict and stress and difficult decisions, and knowing that they're not alone, and that they have skills that they can build on and people that they can come back and check in with. And I think the other big misconception right now is that SEL is not critical race theory. It is not something that is being put out to take over the minds of our children. It is not linked to, and I just saw something the other day from Virginia. It's not linked to socialism. It's not.
Oh my.
Our students create life skills that the job market is saying is important. Do our students know their strengths? Are they able to recognize and manage their emotions so that they can contribute to group processes? Can they have respectful, kind conversations with people? Even if they disagree on something, can they problem solve with a group of people and make responsible, ethical, caring decisions that will support and promote a community instead of tearing it down? And so, we could keep going, I know, but you are right. This is why we have this podcast, so we can keep digging into these amazing pieces. But I would like to say, please register for the PASCD conference coming up, this webinar series that's coming up, and we will drop a link where you can do so in the notes section of this podcast episode.
Wow. Well, I look forward to definitely tuning in so I could hear more about some of the, some of the really just wackadoodle things that people think about in regards to social emotional learning. Socialism.
I know.
Oh my God.
I know where this is.
Oh.
Whew.
I can't wait to have that conversation. We will need to bring some friends in for that one, because I'm like, are we serious?
Where did this come from? And yep, let's deconstruct that.
Wow.
And I am happy to be able to do that with you.
Oh gosh. I'm like, whoa, come on, people. Come on. Socialism. All right now. Yeah, get your SEL Okay, no, I'm not gonna go down that road. So, Krista, as we kind of close out this episode, which has been pretty amazing, for my soul, if uh, for those who are listening today, and they're trying to broaden their SEL backpack, if you will. We have backpacks of all kinds of things, our own identities, our own life experiences. We're trying to, for those who are really trying to move the world forward in a very positive way, there's a lot of things we're trying to carry with us, so that we can move our individual selves, our own families, our classrooms forward. And social emotional learning is at the center of that in so many ways. If people take nothing else away today, if they are just saying, okay, you know what, I have been teaching in the classroom for 25 years. All I knew was character education, and we had our different character traits that we celebrated each week or each month, and we centered our work there. And this social emotional learning is a whole new world that I don't know what to do with. If they are really trying to turn their wheels and they really are trying to move the world forward, what are a couple of things that you will hope or encourage people to carry in their backpacks with them today that just kind of move that work forward?
The first thing I would say is social emotional learning has 5 competencies, and there are descriptors or indicators under each one. You do not have to be responsible for doing all of it. But I do think, especially as educators and as parents, we need to do something. We need to own some of that to the best of our ability and to the best of our strengths. When we look at other adults in a child's life, they can be helping out too. And so knowing that we're creating that community of connected people for those students, they're going to get different aspects of SEL, but we need to step up and do our part. So we don't have to do it all, but we need to do something. And I also think that we need to lean into it because no one is perfect in all competencies all the time. So we need to be modeling our own SEL growth with people and understand that Dr. Maya Angelou says, when you know better, do better. And
Yes.
I know I'm paraphrasing that, but I live by that quote in that we all make mistakes and then we pick up. And how are we going to show that we're doing better for ourselves and for the young people in our lives?
Wow. When we know better, we do better. I think that that's a great way to close for today. So I think that kind of brings us to the close of our episode for today. I mean, Krista, thank you so much for just kind of opening up a little bit more today and just letting the world know just a couple of tidbits. They're gonna get so many more gems like along the way. But I recognize that some of my big takeaways from today's conversation is one, it starts with you first, and just knowing that when you do your work, the work will do what it needs to do for the rest of the world.
Yeah.
And social emotional learning really is just recognizing how you're managing your emotions, how are you building relationships, how are you making really good decisions on your behalf, on the behalf of the relationships that you're nurturing, and how are you then modeling that out so that our young people know how to do this in a productive and positive way.
Yeah.
And that if you understand more about who you are, you then can emulate the best parts of yourself. You can ascend in the light that you were destined for, because each of us are on this planet for something greater than we can ever conceive. But it starts with the small stuff and just knowing that we can love on one another in these small offerings. And that's SEL. So
I
any
can't say
more closing words?
you're amazing. Thank you for being able to summarize all of that so powerfully.
Well, thank you. And so we are going to continue the conversation, young people. We're so glad that you all joined us for episode 2, SEL and EDU. And we are just going to continue to remind you that you can stay in the light.